Hello, Michael.
Hi, Juanma. How
Hello.
things?
So yeah, this is another DevRel Talks, Frontity Talks, or I think that we rebaptized this as Frontity Talks.
Yeah, we have a new member of the team, I see.
Yes, this is Swing.
Ah, so cute.
And yeah, we recently had a blog post introducing this DevRel Talks. So yeah, we already have published 2 of them. This is going to be the 3rd one. And yeah, this session we already agreed to talk about. In my case, I'm going to review the Mars theme, like the reviewing some actions that are defined, some state properties, how the Mars theme uses these actions and properties in the state, and some of the settings in the code that are interesting.
Cool. And I am going to talk about ES6. ES6 is the most recent version of JavaScript. It adds some new features to the language. And I'm just going to review just go over them and see how they're used in Mars theme.
Okay, cool. So you can start if you want.
Sure, let me just share my screen. Right, find the right screen. Okay, so in our docs, this is our docs page at docs.frontity.org. This is where you can learn all about Frontity, but also we have this section down at the bottom here, key concepts, where we introduce, if you're coming more from WordPress, PHP side of things, and you need to get up to speed with JavaScript and React, we have some sections here so you can learn about React. We have some stuff here and JavaScript as well if you're new to JavaScript or just need a refresher on JavaScript. We've divided the JavaScript page into 2. JavaScript concepts. So if you're completely new to JavaScript, you'll probably want to run through this. And then the new version of JavaScript, which is ES6, which adds some features to the language. We've separated them out, and this is the bit that I'm going to concentrate on today. So let me just skip to that section. So let me just expand this so that we can see see my editor, and we've got the documentation here. So there's 6 concepts that get introduced. We've got the new form of variables, arrow functions, the destructuring assignment, template strings, and import and export. That was 6, I think. Were you counting, Juanma? I think that was all 6 of them. Okay, so ES6. So variables, let and const. JavaScript traditionally uses just had one keyword for defining variables, and that was var. Var is, well, it's not officially deprecated, but it's kind of unofficially deprecated in favor of let and const. So the difference between them is that that let allows you to change the value assigned to the variable, and const does not. So const is short for constants. Once you assign the value to that to a const variable, you can't change it at all. The difference between these let and const and var is that let and const are block scoped, whereas var was only function scoped. Kind of, if you don't understand that, you don't really need to worry too much about that. So let's see where they are used. if I go to title.js, throughout Mars theme, const is pretty much universally used. You see const all the time. So, so if I go to menu.js, it's const. If I go to index.js, we use const. In fact, I had a look through the code, and the only instance I can find of let is in title.js. Otherwise, const is used. And the reason let is used here is you see that title gets reassigned. Let me just expand that a bit more. So title is being reassigned depending on various conditions here. So hence, the variable title is defined with let rather than const. Other than that, const is used pretty much all the time for variables in Mars theme. Okay, arrow functions is a new sort of terser way of defining functions. And again, these are used all the time. Just on this same file, we can see that it's defined with an arrow function. You could do this. You could do this the old-fashioned way. I mean, there's two ways you could do this. You could do const title equals function, and then define it like that. Or you could even do the very old-fashioned way, function title, and that would all still work. But universally throughout Mars theme, we're using the newer arrow function syntax, where you assign the title of the name of your function to a variable, and that variable equals a function with a parameter, and then the arrow, and then your code goes within the curly braces. If you're new to that, you can read a bit more about that in our docs. The main purpose of this is just to show you where these concepts are used in the in Mars theme. Oh, yes, I should mention the fact that there is this very terse syntax that if the only thing your function does is return something, you can even take these parentheses out. So was there an example of the terse syntax? I'm not sure if there is. If we, like Juanma said earlier, we're doing this in two parts. So when we come back later on to do the next part, between then and now, I will see if there's a version of this very terse syntax where it just returns where you're just returning something, so you haven't got the brackets.
Yeah,
I think there is one. Yes, in list.js.
In the index, maybe?
In the index.js, yes. It's in list index.js. I knew it was there somewhere. I just couldn't remember off the top of my head. So here you can see that this very terse syntax where it's just returning that. So you don't need to enclose it in the curly braces, and this isn't taking any variables either. So that's about as terse as it gets for function declarations. And in fact, you're doing everything on one line. You're even exporting that function as well.
I'd like to add that maybe it's worth mentioning that all of this is like generic JavaScript API or methods or syntax, modern syntax, and like a good reference for all of this, even we are here kind of summarizing those specific things that you are going to find in the Mars theme. The final reference should be like or a good reference is the mdn.s site. So if you have doubts,
I'll bring that up. If you go to developer.mozilla.org, this is the go-to reference for all things JavaScript. If I expand that, you share. Yeah, this is the place to go for, and I think, you know, if we just search for ES6 here.
Yeah, or you can look for a specific, you can search for a specific feature. You can search for promises. So for
arrow, let's say we've just been talking about arrow functions. So if we just search for arrow function here, there you go. Though a handy tip with Google, if you type into your address bar MDN arrow functions, for your first hit will be the correct page. So if you're searching for anything with JavaScript, just in your address bar type MDN and the feature of the language you're looking for, and the first hit will almost invariably be the page you want. So, but yes, one more, you're absolutely right. The MDN web docs is the place to go, and not just for JavaScript. You know, they've got HTML, CSS, you know, the HTTP protocol, working with graphics. It's the go-to reference for anything to do with web development, to be honest. So good call. Okay, where had we got up to? Default parameters. Default parameters allow you to, in a function, when you pass a parameter, you can assign, you know, if the call to the function doesn't pass a parameter, you can define a default parameter. So here, the parameter is called name, and if you call it without a parameter, it will assign the word there automatically. Now, as far as I can see, there are no examples of default parameters in the Mars theme. I had a good look through and couldn't find one, so I don't know, maybe one more can correct me on that. But it's a fairly simple concept to grasp. So let me move on to the destructuring assignment, which is a much trickier concept
and this
to
is
grasp.
used a lot.
And this is used all over Mars theme. I mean, just on this page I'm on, you can see it being used here, even in the import function, it's being used. So let's go to, yeah, so there's two ways the destructuring assignment works. You can destructure from an array, or you can destructure from an object. What happens is, if you look here, you have this is using an object here. If, so this object has 3 properties, but maybe you only want 2 properties assigned to variables. Let's have, probably the easy thing is to look at the old way of doing it. You'd have the object there, and then you would say, define a variable name equals person.name, so that there, and then you'd go, last name is person.lastname. What the destructuring syntax does is, if you put it in curly braces for object destructuring, it will take and then pass in the object, it will automatically reference the variables with or the properties in the object with the same name as the variables you give. So the variable name will automatically be given person.name as here, and the variable last name will automatically get person.lastname. So it's doing the same as that. So you're doing those two lines with just one line. You're defining two variables or two constants, name and last name, and you're saying that they should get the values, the corresponding values of the properties in the object person. You can also assign a different name to them as well. So here, you're defining two variables, A and B, and you're saying that A will take person.name and B will take person.lastname. So you're kind of just mapping person.name to the variable A and person.lastname to the variable B. And then array destructuring works in a similar way. So you're given an array, and then you define your variables, this time in square brackets, not curly brackets, and pass the array to it. And the way the destructuring works is it takes the first one, so the first item in the array and assigns it to the first variable you define. So A here will equal 10, and the next one gets assigned to the next one, and so on. So again, this would be equivalent to doing something like this. They haven't, we haven't got it in the const. It'd be similar to doing, const A equals items O, and then const B equals items 1. So again, those two lines are being done in a single line there. So examples of this in the Mars theme. Well, object destructuring, as Juanma said earlier, is done just everywhere, especially with Frontity Connect, where you get the state, the actions, the libraries. So you can see here, in pretty much every component in Mars theme, state gets destructured.
Yeah, in every component, like the props object that is received in every definition of a React component, is destructured to just select all those properties that are needed in that specific component.
Yeah, precisely. So here, so for the post component is getting nearly everything in the props. The props, by the way, are passed when you pass a component to the connect, to Frontity Connect. That's how the props get passed through here, and that is basically the Frontity object, which then gets deconstructed into, in this case, state, actions, and libraries, because this component needs to use all of those. And an example, yeah, so as I said, it's used absolutely everywhere, and even in the import statements, this is getting connect and styled from Frontity, and that's being deconstructed because Frontity is an object. An example of array destructuring is in nav.js. Let's just expand this out. Right. And here you can see the square bracket syntax means that that name and link are going to be assigned the values of the first two items in the array that gets from the array that gets passed in to this into this map function. And this comes from state.theme.menu. So if we go to frontity.settings.js, state.theme.menu, you see is an array of arrays. So each of those, so for instance, home here, so the first item, so item 0 is home, item 1 is the backslash. And so if I go back to nav.js, name here will get home, and link will get the backslash. And I think that's pretty much the only example of array destructuring in Mars theme. But as I said, object destructuring happens all over the place. Okay, template strings. Template strings are also very common in Mars theme. Yeah, they're also called template literals. You might see them referred to as template literals rather than template strings. The traditional way of defining strings in JavaScript is with either single quotes or double quotes. But template literals or template strings uses the backtick. And the advantage of using template strings is you can embed in expressions in your string, which can be evaluated. And template strings are all over the place. Let's have a look at title.js. So you can see when, you'll remember title was defined as a let, one of the first things we talked about rather than a const. It's just about the only example of let in Mars theme. And so the variable title gets reassigned a value depending on a condition. And you see it's got a template literal there. And you can see the expressions that get evaluated. So title will be something different. So you don't need to literally say what it should be. You know, so here you've got a template literal, which will have the string author and a colon, and then whatever that gets evaluated to, and then a hyphen, and whatever that gets evaluated to. And the other place template literals are used an awful lot is in the styling, because the styled component always takes a template literal as a parameter. So you'll see that template literals used a lot. And then the sixth and final one is import and export. This is the way that lets you put components into individual files and then import them. And you'll see this at the top of every component file, importing from React, importing from Frontity, importing from other components. And every component also has an export. I don't think you'll find a file in Mars theme that doesn't have both import and export. The only one that won't have an export, I think, is, oh no, even this will have an export, won't it? Yes, because it exports to even your root index.js. And that about, and yeah, so that, as I said, was the last concept in ES6 to cover here. It's all fully explained in our docs. As I said, if you go to our docs and down at the bottom, key concepts and Java, we've got the JavaScript section and ES6. I suppose one thing to just talk about just quickly is if I run npx frontity, what is it? Not build, serve. That's what I want to do. And then over here, I open up localhost 3000. One of the things you might be wondering is about older browsers. What Frontity does is, if I open up the console and go to elements, you'll see here at the bottom, that's maybe quite small. Let me just make that a bit bigger. Okay, that's made it a bit too big. Now we can't see what we're doing. Frontity gives you two versions of your JavaScript. So you can write all your code in ES6 and it gets compiled both to ES6 and ES5. If we look at that one, this you'll see there that you can see just after the word list there, you can see .es5. So if your site is being served to an older browser, it will use the ES5 version. Otherwise, it uses the standard version of the JavaScript. So you can actually write your code in ES6 when working with Frontity and not worry about support for older browsers. And that, I think, is about all I have to say about ES6 in Mars theme.
Okay, that's great. Very interesting, because what I'd like to do later is to review the interesting features of the Mars theme. So I think this Frontity talk is kind of focused on this theme, and we are going to do like a good review of the theme.
Absolutely, yes. And, because I think anybody coming to Frontity for the first time, the first thing you're going to do is start working with Mars theme. So having a good understanding of it is a great way to get started with Frontity.
So yeah, you, Michael, explained the first part, and you reviewed all the ES6 features that are being used in the Mars theme. So I'm going to do the second part, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to review the code of the Mars theme to show like the strategies used to implement different features. For example, using loadable to create a different bundle that is loaded on different pages defined for the project. This is one thing. Second thing is the use of state and actions to implement features, and a few more things. So
awesome.
So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share my screen. Yeah, this one. And you should see my terminal.
Yep.
So I have already created a default project using the CLI of Frontity, npx Frontity create. The name of the project is demo Mars theme. And as you can see here, I have chosen the Mars theme as a starter theme. So if I go to demo Mars theme and I open it with Visual Code, we can see here the structure with some interesting files like Frontity settings. Here is where we define the packages of the project. This is some general information of the project that can be accessed from React components. And here we are defining that this project is going to use the package Mars theme, the package WP source, the package tiny router, and the package HTML to React. So we will be able to access these packages from the React code. In the case of the Frontity Mars theme, we can define some things that are going to, this is like a configuration for the Mars theme. So the Mars theme is already prepared for the user to define these things. So we can define the menu, whatever we define here, the Mars theme is going to use the value of this menu in the form of an array, as you explained in your part where you explain how the Mars theme uses the structuring of the array. So here is where we define the menu. So this is the default menu that is already created for us, but we could create any custom menu we want for the theme. And then there are two specific state variables used in the project, show on list and show on post, that by default they are set to false, but when we set them to true, we will see what is going to happen. So first, what we are going to do is launching this project with the Mars theme. We are going to launch it locally by using npx frontity dev. And as we can see in the code, we have set these variables as false, false, and also inside the project, the theme itself has these variables set as false by default. So okay, did I set something here? Network, online. Yes. Okay, so this is the default configuration. So this is something that we can do in any theme. In this specific theme, there are two variables that are defined for enabling or disabling specific features of the theme. So in this case, show on list is set to false. If we set this to true, whenever we list post, we will show the feature image. So we have changed this. The bundle has been rebuilt, and if we reload, we can see that now the theme is behaving differently. It's showing the feature image for every item listed.
Yeah, it's probably worth mentioning that you had to manually reload that because a change in frontity.settings.js doesn't cause an automatic reload. You have to be in the source folder or in one of the packages folders in order to get the auto reload.
Yes, that's true. But if we do changes in the React components, the project will be automatically reloaded.
Exactly.
So the other feature is in this show on post, by default, is set to false. That means that when we go to a post, to a link that is going to display a post, by default is not showing any featured image. But if we set this to true and we reload, we can see that now on every post we go, we will see the featured image for that post. So where are we using these state variables in the code? So let's check this. If we look for show on list, I'm going to exclude the build folder and also the MD files. So we can see that this variable is used in 3 places. First, in the project definition, where we can also define specific variables for the theme, like we are doing here. We are setting these variables with a default value, but then, well, this is the default configuration of the theme. So we have in one side like the default definition of the theme, and in the other side the project definition. So from the project we can define variables on the theme, and these values will be overwritten. This is like the default. Whenever you create a theme, you can create it with a default definition. So every use of the theme will have a default behavior. This is the default behavior of the theme. And then in the Frontity settings, we can override these settings.
Probably worth saying that you can also define your menu in index.js as well as in Frontity settings.js. And if you put different things here, the two get put together. So the overriding doesn't happen for the menu.
Is that right?
I believe so. So if you add another component, if you add another...
Okay, let's try that. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, so they compound, you get a compounded version. Yeah.
Yeah, they are merged. Okay, cool. So let's continue. We have this variable show on list that is being used in the list item component that is part of the list components. So if we go here, we have a list component that is using loadable, that we explain what that means in a minute. But this component starts here. This is the responsible of displaying a list of items. And we will get a list of items whenever we have a page related to a category, for example, or like the broader term that is taxonomy. We can create a category, and a category is a taxonomy. In the same way, we can define our custom taxonomy, but the typical one and the default one in WordPress is a category. So a category is assigned to a post, and we can have a list of posts that are grouped under a category. So to display this kind of pages, we have defined this component, the list component. For every category, we will show the posts that are assigned to that category. But also another example is the posts that are assigned to an author. So they are like two use cases for the same type, like a list of items grouped under a specific term, under a taxonomy, or that have the same taxonomy or the same category, or that have the same author. So we are using the same component for these two use cases. And what we do is we show like a title, a header, and then we display each item that is in this list. To display each item, we use a specific item component that we are importing here. And this list item is using this state theme feature show on list. So as you can see, whenever we use the connect is a higher order component that what it does is kind of injecting through the props of this React component, it's injecting the Frontity object. And part of the Frontity object is state, is libraries, is actions. And from the state, we can access to different namespaces. And one important namespace is theme. So state.theme. For every package, we will have a specific namespace. So we can use state variables for each package, but they will be separated in different namespaces. So for the theme, we can use the state.theme area. And instead, inside that part, we can use the feature. That is what we have defined here. Here. State, theme, feature, and then we have here some properties. So if this property is true, we will show the feature media. If this is false, we will not display the feature media. And the same, we have the same in the post. So we have show on list, that is what we just saw, and show on post. And we are using this on the post component. The same. If state.theme.feature.show on post is true, we will show the feature media. If not, we will not show that. So we have just saw the use of some like configuration of the theme that we can use in our React component. Then we can make use of like dynamic variables that can be changed through the code. And for that, we have here an example. This is an example of a variable that is meant to be changed according to different methods, to different actions that we will trigger from all React components. So it's the same, state.theme, and inside this part of the state, the namespace theme, we can define like several properties. One property that we are going to define is mobile menu open. And the interesting part about this property is that we can use actions. So in the same way that we have a state, we will have actions. And actions are handled the same. Inside actions, we will define different namespaces that will be related to the different packages. And for every namespace, we will be able to define some methods, some actions that those actions will be able to change the value of some state properties. Like what we are doing here, we are defining toggle mobile menu and close mobile menu. And these methods will be receiving the state, and we can change the value of these state properties. So toggle mobile menu, for example, when we execute this method, what we will do is changing the value of the Boolean value of the isMobile menu open. So if it's true, it will set it to false. And if it's false, it will set it to true. It will just switch the value. And the close mobile menu will directly set this value to false. So where are we using these actions? So if we go here, where this is the definition of the actions. Here, we are just using the value of isMobile menu open to execute an action. So in the link component, we are checking the value of this property to trigger one action. So if we go to a link and the menu modal is open, we will close that menu modal because it's the expected behavior. And we will see a more complex use of these actions on this state variable or state property here. So here we are using destructuring to get only is mobile open. And what we're doing here is, if it's mobile menu open, we will show a close icon. And if it's not open, we will show an hamburger icon. And we can see that here. Let me show this a bit bigger. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So how does this whole thing of mobile works? Let's go first to the index, the theme. We have, let me look for media. Yes, media. Okay, in the nav, for example, in the nav container, we have this, no, the menu. We have this menu. This menu is only going to be displayed when the max width, like when the width is this width or lower. So this is the case of this mobile view. So whenever we have this size of the screen, we will display this this part where we are showing this icon here. The hamburger icon is this case, but if it's mobile menu open, that is going to happen when I click this. When I click this, is mobile menu open will be set to true, and we will show this icon, that is this icon here. But also we will set this to disable the ability of scrolling down this page. So we are displaying this menu modal, and this menu modal also, as you can see, we are using this state variable to do different things. Based on the value of this state variable, we are showing the proper close icon, and we are also showing the menu modal. The menu modal is all of this. It's all of this that is displayed when is mobile menu open is set to true. And if I click this button, close icon, is mobile menu open will be set to false, so we will hide the whole menu modal. And also, if the width is higher than 560, we will not show any mobile menu modal, so this action will not be used. So as you can see, we are mixing here like responsive CSS things to show or not showing specific parts of the specific components, but then these components are relying on actions and state variables to display or not display some things. Another interesting thing here is that we have a list component to create the, all of these components are going to generate a final bundle. This final bundle will include both the CSS and the JavaScript for the whole React project, the whole Frontity project. But what we can do is define specific components so they create a separated bundle. And this bundle will only be loaded whenever this React component is required. This is the case of the list. the list. By using loadable, what we are doing here is telling the Webpack that is in the background, we are telling Webpack, okay, for this component and all the components that are required for this one, create a different bundle. So this bundle is only to be loaded whenever we use this list component. And we can see that here in the code. So if I clean this, we can see that we are loading demo mass theme module, and then we are loading the list module. We are loading two bundles. If we go to a post, and we clear, okay, here we are loading the main bundle and we are loading this one, but they are loading this one because we are doing some prefetching. So if we go to the code of the post, we can see this here. What we are doing is whenever we render this post component, the first time it's rendered, what we are doing is prefetching the list, preloading the list component. So I'm going to just comment this code so we can see that without that part of the code, if we load the post component, we are only using the bundle and the component works the same. But in order to improve the performance, what we are doing is adding this piece of code. So if we go directly to this page, and this page is going to be server-side rendered, the page is going to be loaded, the React project is going to iterate this post component, and then this code will take into action. And one of the things that is going to be managed by React is this use effect. And this use effect, what it's going to do is, I'm going to save this, I'm going to clean this, and if I reload this, we are loading the list module. Just as we are doing this as a way to improve the performance, because this list component will be already loaded, and when we go to the home, it will be faster because this JavaScript file will be already loaded. We won't have to bring back that component because it's already loaded. But we can do that because we did this. Because we created a separate bundle, we can decide whenever we want to do that. And also the good thing about this is that this is done on the after the React component, after the React components are being hydrated. That means that we already have the content in our browser. So from the user experience point of view, this is transparent for the final user. The final user will be seeing the whole content, and in the background, we are doing more things like advancing whatever is going to happen next, so it's going faster.
So your site will still work without it?
Yes, as you can see.
It would just be slower.
Yes.
What implications does this have for mobile users? Because you're fetching data in the background, as you just mentioned, that may not get used. So, so people on limited data plans, say, are downloading data that they might not need.
Well, what we are doing here is improving the user experience of the user.
I guess it's a trade-off, isn't it, between maximizing the speed and the user experience and.
Yes, the final user experience is going to be even better for the mobile users because we are selecting what the user needs to load to be able to watch that page. So it's like the minimum. We are splitting, for example, the list module doesn't need to be loaded for watching the post. So if you go directly to that page is going to be loaded even if a mobile device. But then if you go to the home page, as we have done that in the background, your mobile version is going to load faster.
Because it's preloaded, yeah.
Preloaded.
Yeah, I guess, and it's only preloading the most common things, isn't it? The most common thing you're likely to do is go to the home page.
Yes, yes.
And then when you go to the home page, it loads 10 posts, which are already preloaded, assuming a default setup. And then it preloads page 2, the next 10 posts. But it only preloads page 2 at the point you go to the home page.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to
so it's kind of a trade-off between improving the user experience and eating into the data plan.
Yeah, well, these are tools that you can use in the way you decide. I mean, that this can be different for different projects. So the cool thing about the Frontity is that at the end, you have React code and you have different tools like the ability of creating different bundles and the ability of doing prefetching whenever you decide is best for your final users. So with those tools, then you can decide like the final bundles whenever you want to preload them or not, or even you can choose to deliver a different whole version for your mobile users. So you can play around with these concepts a lot to create like the best final version of your project.
This is just how Mars Theme does it.
Exactly.
So the developer could make a choice to sacrifice user experience to minimize unnecessary data if say the audience is in a country where there might be a lot of users with very limited data plans and maybe a slow 3G network or something.
Yeah, maybe
so it's a trade-off that the developer can choose to make.
Yes. Yes, it is. So if we activate this, we have this list bundle already loaded. So when we go to the home page, for example, it goes fast. This JavaScript is already loaded. And then the last thing I want to mention is the pagination component that is doing an interesting thing. So here we have the pagination. And for every link, we can access some interesting data. And one of the properties that we will get for every link is the property next and the property previous. These properties are only when the type of the resource, of the WordPress resource, is an archive. So for those specific resources, for those links, I mean, for the links that represent archives, and archives are list of other resources that are posts or any other custom post types. For those ones, we will have the next and the previous. I mean, for those resources that can be paginated, that can be grouped in different pages, we will have the next and the previous. So we can make use of these properties to use the useEffect hook to do some prefetching in the same way that we did with the other bundle. So if there is a next property, what we can do is fetching the data for that next page. That will mean that whenever we click the next page, the data associated to that page will be already loaded will be already downloaded, will be already fetched from the server.
So it's what we were saying earlier. We're kind of predicting the most likely next action.
Exactly.
Like if you land on a post page, your most likely next action would be to go to the home page to see the listing of the archive. And if you're on that page, your most likely next action would be to load the next page.
Yes.
So those most likely next actions are being preloaded for you in order to improve the user experience.
That's right.
So if you do something different, like go to the About page, say, that may not be preloaded.
Yes, but as I've said before, you can decide what to do, and
Precisely,
a good strategy is that you may have some analytics of your project, and you can check what is the most popular path your users are following. I mean, they get to a specific post, and then they go to the home page, or maybe they always go to the About page, or whatever. So with that information, you can tune your project so it's faster, like for the general use of your project. But yeah, this is an interesting strategy, like preloading components and prefetching routes. So that information is already there when you go to that page. A typical case is the pagination. When you go to the page one, in like the 60% of the cases, 70% of the cases, users are going to go to the page two. So that information is going to be there whenever you click, because we have already done that. For example, in this theme, it's not implemented, but in the 2020 theme, there is another interesting behavior. That is, whenever you hover on every link, the code behind that link implementation is going to do a fetch of that page in the background. So it's the same. We are like advancing the future actions of the user. So whenever we click on that link, that content will be already fetched from the user.
How does that work on mobile where you don't have hover states?
Well, in mobile, it's not working.
No.
The hover is not working. No.
So it's not doing the prefetching on mobile then on hover. It's only when you
Yeah, because the hover is not
possible on a mobile device.
It's not detected.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's all what I wanted to mention about the Mars theme.
Super interesting. Yes, I learned some stuff there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there are some cool things here implemented, because this 2020 theme and the Mars theme are meant to be like starter themes, showing what can be done with Frontity. So it already applies some interesting strategies for implementing different behaviors. So yeah, I think that in some other Frontity talks, I'd like to do the same with some other themes. For example, the 2020 theme, or some themes created by the community, like the one that Alexandra created, or some other themes that are
There's some great themes out there that people have created.
Yes. If we were YouTubers, we would say, okay, if you want us to talk about a specific theme, put that in the comments.
Yeah, down there.
Yeah, but I think we are not there yet.
Yeah, we're working on it.
Yes.
We're at the start of our journey here, guys.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to. Am I still? Yes, I'm still sharing my screen.
Yeah, I'm still seeing your screen. Cool. So super interesting. And that was total coincidence that our subjects overlapped. We didn't actually plan that.
No.
But I think this has turned out to be, quite a good overview of Mars theme for people who are new to it. And as I say, unintended, but it worked out pretty well.
Yes.
Because we kind of pick our topics independently, what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
And they just lined up.
It's a good space to review different things that may be interesting for the community. And also by preparing this talk, I detected some things that could be improved in the documentation. So yeah, it's a good exercise.
Yeah.
This one.
Cool.
Yeah. So I think that we can say goodbye.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us for this.
Yes. And yeah, we will do another Frontity talk like in a few weeks.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Look forward to that.
Yes. Okay. See you later.
Yep. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.